And a chance now on Fox 2 Game Day to talk about the Olympics. This man, Steve Schlanger, on the call for the Winter Games, South Korea, but also the Paralympics. We caught him on a rare weekend. You're back in town this weekend, and your family's like, what are you doing sitting there with Martin, Dad? Get home. How rare is this for you to be in town?
This coming weekend will be the first full weekend that I've spent back home in St. Louis since early October. So it's been a long stretch. A lot of travel, but no complaints.
And for you with the Olympics, how many Olympics have you been on? Summer, winter combined?
This is 4 total.
Okay. Does it ever blow your mind when you're on the call and your friends are texting or calling? I mean, the reach that the Olympic Games have.
Yeah, I mean, you know it going in that it's one of the biggest stages in sports. It has one of the most significant platforms. But when you're actually calling one of the events, you're just sitting there in a booth and you have your partner next to you, you have a producer, you have the headset on, and you're focused on the job at hand. So you don't always get the full sense or appreciation of exactly how many people you're going out to. But then you get the texts and the emails, and I mean, it's cool. I'm just glad that we are able to have that ability to reach as many people as we do.
And then you had a call, women's cross country, and some people have said it's one of the greatest Olympic calls ever, and describe for people what took place, how you reacted, and then the reaction to that.
Well, it was a confluence of a lot of circumstances that came together at just the right time to make it such a significant event. The U.S. women's cross-country team had come into the Olympics having never won an Olympic medal. So that was one of the big droughts that was a storyline leading up to the Olympics. And in their first few events, they came close on several occasions. They had top fives, but just couldn't do it. So the drama kind of kept building throughout the 2 weeks, and they were coming down to their final few chances. And then they get down to this particular race. It was really their last best chance. And it turned out to be a dramatic race where the U.S. came from behind on the final lap, and then going around the final corner, they were in second place, and they were in position to get that elusive medal. But then Jessie Diggins made this pass on the outside and then just narrowly won in a photo finish almost to win what was the gold medal instead of just a medal, and it just kind of blew up from there.
And do you remember the call, like verbatim? I mean, it wasn't quite, do you believe in miracles, part two?
That one was taken.
That was taken,
yes.
yes.
Yeah, right. No, I remember.
And then the reaction, I mean, you got calls and you're on TV shows. You're going to be on Andy Cohen, we think? Or
and what was interesting is the fact that when we did it, we knew it was a big moment, but we had no idea what the aftermath would be like and how many people would eventually listen to it. I had a producer at NBC in New York just recently tell me it's gone over the 10 million view mark on NBC Sports site. So I had no idea about the aftermath and how many people heard it the first time and then would subsequently hear it there on after.
All right, from the U-High, Mizzou, the Olympics, and coming up soon, a couple of months now, the Tour de France. I've learned to say that at CBC, by the way. Tour de France. That's got to be just a spectacle, because it's not just one event like a Super Bowl. I mean, it's a 3-week Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's really a circus, and it's unlike anything in sports. It's almost not like covering a sporting event in the traditional sense, because you think of a sporting event, you think of something that happens in a stationary venue, like a stadium or an arena, but this is a moving event every single day. It's more like a combination of a parade and the amazing race, because you're just trying to keep up with everything. And so to cover all of the storylines, you have almost 200 athletes, you have over 20 teams, you have media from all around the world that has to set up shop every day. It is really a spectacle that is hard to describe if you just haven't seen it.
And then there are hazards, right? Is this the event where your foot was run over live on television? That doesn't usually happen in baseball or football.
I don't know I don't think it was live, but it was on tape, and I think it was such, it was such entertainment for the people back in the truck. The producers, well, let's just leave it in. Let's leave that in. Why should we take that out? So
no expletive at that point. So
right,
when
right,
a car
right.
just rolls over your foot.
It was a situation where it was the top of a mountain in the Alps, and the race ended at the peak, right at the summit of this mountain, and it was a little narrow road. It went up and then went right back down. So there was hardly any room. So you had all these people converging on the riders. You had cars that were trying to get through. You had these barriers that really weren't keeping people back. And so anyway, I was interviewing one of the riders who had just finished in a car with some dignitaries had come through, and they don't care if you're standing there. They just squeeze on by, and he clipped the back of my heel. The car ran over my heel, and I was in the middle of the interview, and so I just tried to suppress it as long as I could, and finished off the interview pretty quick from there.
Boy, so you can Google either the great call on the cross country or try and find Steve with his foot being run over at the Tour. So we talk about these sports. These are not things you called in your backyard growing up in Shrewsbury. I mean, how does one evolve as an announcer calling cross-country skiing or the biathlon?
Well, I think it probably all started when I won the ping pong championship at St. Louis U High, and I thought that I was going to have that decorated Olympic career.
That's when the itch began.
That's when the itch began, but alas, I didn't have the fitness or the mental strength to continue in ping pong, so I ended up broadcasting it. But I'd always had an interest in some of these other sports. I'd done a lot of the mainstream sports, and I wanted to just expand and see where else I could go. And one of the other things was I never really, had the desire to be a local team's play-by-play announcer. I always wanted to try and do the big events, for a national network and try to work as many of those events as I could. And that sort of led me down this path where I ended up at the Olympics. And I've been fortunate enough to work at some other events like the Masters, British Open Golf, Australian Open Tennis. So, I've been able to hit a lot of the events that I originally targeted.
And some people might say, well, those are kind of the fringe sports or the weird sports. That's a lot more interesting than being in Milwaukee or Pittsburgh on a Tuesday night calling a baseball in terms of venues. But you did call a Cardinal baseball. Young guy, what was it like stepping in the booth? And Jack Buck is sitting right there. I mean, what was that experience like?
Well, when I did that, I was probably in my mid-20s, early to mid-20s. And at the time, it's hard to get the full appreciation for it because you're so new and you're just trying to find your way through without getting anybody upset at you for anything, just trying to stay in your lane, do the right thing. So, at the time, you're just trying to feel it out at the moment. But it was a cool experience, and it sort of led me to where I am now. It helped to provide an early springboard that allowed me to, take the next step, and, something I was pretty grateful for.
And it wasn't just Cardinal baseball, though. As I recall, you stepped in at a time Mark McGwire arrived.
Right.
So here, the stage could not have been any bigger in terms of calling a game. It wasn't just a Tuesday night in Houston.
Right. That was part of the whirlwind that was taking place that you're just trying to get your head around and get a feel for, because I remember being in Miami, and he was, on the cusp of getting to number 60. And, you had Entertainment Tonight there. You had Access Hollywood. You had the nightly news from all of the networks. It wasn't just, ESPN and Baseball Tonight showing up. You had all of these entertainment and news outlets. So you really got a sense of the enormity, the scope and scale of the moment. And that's really when you had an understanding and appreciation for just how big it was. Also,
Rams sideline reporter. We used to have a football team called the Rams. You were part of that. What sport haven't you called? Like, have you done rowing, canoeing? I'm trying to think of summer. You have
at the Rio Olympics.
I
did canoe slalom. It was one of 6 sports I did for the Rio Olympics. So they had me bouncing around to half a dozen different sports. And somebody asked me a couple years ago, and I counted it out, and it came to over 40, at least various disciplines of different sports that I'd called. So probably just north of 40. I don't know the exact number, and I don't think I want to know.
Well, if only they would add wall ball to the Olympic
We were
category.
good. The U-High was good at wall ball. Yeah.
Steve Schlanger from the Olympics to our studios here back in town briefly and joining us here on Game Day.